What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to Kamikaze. Thank you for joining me today. We have a very special day today. School is in session. I thought it'd be kind of cool to bring in someone from the community who knows a ton about foreign books. I know very little. I like to learn a little bit more. They're definitely heating up in the market. So why not learn a little bit more to know what to keep an eye out for, or it's another way to start collecting something a little bit different. So without further ado, I have Shelby from Hotkey Comics on deck, and we're going to bring him in and we're going to talk foreign books. Here we go. Welcome, Shelby. How are you?
Hi, thanks. I'm good. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. I much appreciate it. So your Hotkey Comics, what I thought we'd start doing is just give a lay of the land, what's again, you're about, your page, what you're up to, and then we'll get into talking about foreign comic books, and you can educate me. So I'll start with, you can just tell me what you're up to right now.
Sure. Well, I have my Instagram page, which is I do mystery boxes on there, but it's mainly focused on the foreign comics. I really started focusing on those about a year and a half ago. I do Whatnot sales as well. I do a foreign show every Tuesday that's at least half foreign comics and half American. And then first Tuesday of every month is 100% foreign. So I've been doing that on Whatnot. That's been going really well. But yeah, I love foreign comics. That's my focus.
Yeah, so that's why we're here today. So let's start off. Why foreign comics? Why did you get into it?
I saw a couple covers. I really liked them, and they had a much cheaper entry point, honestly, than the American keys. Right. So I thought, here's a good way to get some of these, and I'll grab a couple. Once I had them in my hands, I fell in love with them, which is usually the case with most people. Some people love it, some hate them, but a lot of people are starting to love them. And you can really get some great stuff that you just can't really touch on the American versions. For a much better entry price, and you can collect stuff you love.
So first question is talking about the different versions. Like, from your knowledge, do they release the foreign at the same time they would release the, like, say, North American version?
With the moderns, that's been more the case. Once you get from like the Bronze Age on back, which is where I focus a lot, it's really random. There's no rhyme or reason. There's no like master list. Like, you can go and find every American comic Marvel's printed. You can't do that with foreigns. You can't even find how many countries printed it. It really is the Wild West. So a lot of it is just, doing research, seeing what's out there, and then you find, hey, here's a version of Amazing Spider-Man 129 I didn't know existed. And then you find it, and it's out there. But yeah, it's really, you just got to do a lot of research, and it's hard to find a lot of stuff. So I kind of compare it to, people get kind of confused with the modern variants. That's like checkers. You get into foreigns, you're into chess. You got if you could, you think these modern variants are hard to track, wait till you touch foreigns. There's a lot to it.
Yeah, it seems pretty crazy. What really sort of drew me to it was, like you said, like some of the bigger key books, like your 180s, your ASM 129. Like I saw the foreign version, and I was like, it was super intriguing. Not to mention, because like the covers are different, but the content is the same, right?
Yeah. Well, it usually is. A lot of foreign publishers, they would take, like a Hulk 180, and they're just going to add maybe an Avengers story to the back, or a Fantastic Four story to the back. It's kind of what they wanted to do, because there wasn't any guidelines for them. So you get a lot of foreign editions have multiple issues in them, which leads to some really cool key combinations that you just can't find in Americans. Like there's a French version from the 80s that has Hulk 180 and Hulk 181 in it. And
really?
Finding that in America,
That's crazy. But so, and again, does Marvel give, like, these are all printed by separate or individual printing houses, like in their respective country, correct? Is this like licensed from Marvel, or your knowledge?
Some are bootleg, some are licensed. The more modern ones now, with Panini, those are all licensed, but you get some of the more famous ones are the non-canon Spiderman from Mexico. And that was where they just started writing their own stories. And, they weren't making many, and some of those now were very, very hard to find and very expensive. So yeah, again, it's just kind of each country did their own thing.
Okay, interesting. So where did you, like where did you sort of dip your feet in terms of like starting to collect foreigns? Like what was the first few that you found and came across?
Yeah, the first few were the Russian reprints. Those are pretty recent. That's where a lot of people start because you get the covers. I bought, it's basically the trinity of it. You know, it had AF-15, had Hulk 180 and ASM 129. And I got all three for under $100 because they were 2019 reprints, you know, so it's cool. It lets you get the covers. I mean, yeah, it's got Russian on it, but it's the same overall cover art, and it's a good way to get into it. So those are really cool. But that was the first ones I bought.
They're, sorry, the reprints of the original foreign, or like?
They're not the original foreign. Like Russia didn't do hardly any originals. Most of them coming out of Russia is all from the 2000s. But they started, you know, they saw the popularity of it and they started printing them, and they put the covers on it. Now, some countries, they didn't put the covers on it, they just got the guts. Or you get a cover, but not the same guts, because again, they did what they wanted, you know?
That's
and
just
at the time they were putting keys. So they were just printing the current stories and what they wanted to put out.
That's crazy. So majority of them will focus on, like you said, some of the key books. Like you're not going to be getting some, you know, they're not going to do will they do the whole run, or will they just do the key books?
Yeah, most of them are going to do somewhat of a continuous run, you know, and they'll add different stories in it though. Like there's a lot of the Brazil digest size Spidey stories following, and then they'll add different whatever they wanted after it. So you'll get a Spider-Man run, and then you get random stories. Or follow any type of storyline, you know, they're just kind of random inserts.
That's interesting. Wow. So you started with the Russian. I've seen a lot of the, I guess, the Spanish Spiderman. Is there? Were they done in Mexico? Were they done also in like?
Yeah, most of them were printed in the countries. Out of Brazil, you had April was one of the big publishers, and sometimes they would distribute to 3 or 4 countries. So, you know, and there's no telling when you buy a copy which country it was distributed to, because it's all from the same origin. But yeah, usually it was all done within that country and distributed in that country.
So you mentioned, what's the manufacturer? Able?
Yeah, that's one of the big Brazil ones you'll see. ABRIL. Yeah.
Say that again, sorry?
ABRIL.
Is there like, say, a top 5 in the world in terms of like who's printing stuff, or no?
Not, I mean, now there is Panini is your top one.
Right.
You know, they do Italian and they do the Mexican. But before that, like I focus a lot on bronze on back. You know, there's a lot of moderns, but again, yeah, there's no pattern or rhyme or reason. There's not even a master list. Like if you want to see how many countries printed an ASM 129, it's guesswork at this point, you know, because people are still finding new ones. We think we found them all, but they could find another one tomorrow from a country that we didn't even know printed it.
Right. So there's no database where you can draw from.
No, I mean, you know, there's some comic database sites are putting out what they know. Like my comic shop, they got some listings for foreigns, but it's by no means comprehensive or complete.
So then I guess that would be part of the appeal is the scarcity of it. Because like, I mean, we're all like in collecting, like one of the things that I guess a lot of people are interested in is the variants and low print runs, something that's obscure, an error like that makes it that much rarer than other things. I guess that's the appeal for foreign books.
Yeah, definitely. You know, like you mentioned with the Mexico, those are catching on. The Reprints is your main Mexico books, and you know, like I got a Daredevil one from La Prensa from the 60s. There's 9 of those on the CBCS census, so it's not like you got 5,000 of them like you do with the American to pick from. You know, if you find one, you better grab it if you like it, because you may not see another one.
Right, and because of this, and more people focusing on foreigns, I see the prices really starting to rise, especially in this past year. Do you not agree? Like even in some of the comic cons that I see down in the States, like they're really foreign heavy. Yeah,
the prices, I mean, stuff I could buy last January for $100 is $1,000 now. I mean, it's ridiculous, and they're still, you know, greatly undervalued, because again, if 50 people all of a sudden decide they want this issue and there's 20 of them available, what's going to happen to them? They're going to start bidding each other up, and it's just going to keep going up.
That's insane. What's the most popular? Is it the Spanish editions, or like I see a lot of the like you said, the Russian, but I see a lot of Spanish editions that are most prevalent. That's what I see out there.
Yep, the Reprints and the Mexican editions are definitely some of the more popular ones, probably just because they're so close. And some of them may have been distributed in the States. Again, they don't know with the border down there. You may have had some coming over. Your Canadian price variants, those are foreign editions. A lot of people don't realize it, but they're already collecting.
So, yeah.
Even though they were printed in the States, they're a little different, but they're still sold in another country. So.
The Canadian price variant, oh yeah, I guess it was printed and then sent up to us here to. I have a few. Like, I mean, I know for myself, I'm keeping an eye out for any Canadian price variant of some of the hot, and they're really, really hard to find.
Yeah,
like I have
premium.
One of my first books that I collected and that got me into collecting was my Punisher one, and it's a Canadian price variant, and they're all newsstands, of course, but I didn't realize that those were considered I guess it's a foreign edition, right? Like,
I mean, they were printed in America but sold in another country, so
right.
As I'm concerned, they're foreign editions. Same with the UK Pence edition. They were printed here but shipped overseas.
Right.
Those are comics. They're just in English, so they're more accepted. But yeah.
Also with the Pence editions, I find that they're also gaining attention as well, where they kind of sat for. I know, like, if you had the American versus the UK version, it definitely the American would command more of a premium. But now people are like, well, there's not that many of these UKs, so this price should increase.
Yeah, and some of them are seeing, multiples of the American version. Some of them are still a little bit under, but they're definitely getting to where more people are wanting them, and like I said, if there's only so many copies of them out there and more people than that want them, you can guess what the prices are going to do.
Yeah. Do you know of anybody who's trying to get together a database of this, or is this just way too...
I know some people have. I know one guy had been working on it for I think like 7-8 years on Facebook. There's a nice foreign comic group on Facebook. Foreign comic collectors. But again, it's not comprehensive or complete, and I'm not really sure how far along he is. But yeah, there's a few people trying to put something together to help people out. But I don't think there'll ever be a complete database. Maybe, who knows? But that would take a lot of work and a lot of manpower.
Yeah. So what would you suggest, like, what would be the best places for somebody new getting into it to start doing the research, like Facebook groups, or would that be a good place to start? Yeah.
Yep. Facebook groups, Instagram Foreign Collectors. There's a few of them. HFQ Comics, I work with them. We teamed up on foreign editions. They have a lot of great information they put out. And eBay, you can do some research on eBay. Just be careful, especially if it's shipping from another country. Make sure you use goods and services. But you're kind of just paying what you think it's worth, because again, there's no database to see, what's the last 10 of these sold for. You might be lucky if you can find one or two sales in the last 90 days versus a complete sales history.
Right.
I tell people, start with the people you like, start with your favorite characters, obviously. If you have a country you're drawn to, start with that country and go find some of your favorite issues and just see what they're going for and buy what you like.
Yeah, I guess that would be a good starting point for somebody kind of getting into it, because it would just be like, yeah, it's just, for me, it seems so. This is why I kind of wanted to sit down and chat, because it seems so daunting. Like, I don't know, for me, when I look at it, it didn't seem like a rhyme or reason, like, to a lot of these editions. It just seems like, here's like this edition here and was printed in, whatever country it was. But the interesting thing that I'd like to know more about is there, like, with the bigger books, do you kind of know that there are print runs, like, in terms of like with the bigger, like, say the Spanish edition, do you know that they printed this many of ASM 129 approximately, or is it just no?
Yeah, it really is the Wild West. A lot of the companies that printed these haven't been around, some of them, for 10, 20, 30 years.
Right.
And you get that info. So we have guesstimates. We know that obviously the print ones were much smaller than America, because they weren't sold there as collectible. They were sold basically as readers, especially from the 80s on back till you got into the modern market. And people were reading them and they throw them away because they didn't see any value. You had maybe 1% in each country was actually collecting them because they thought there might be something. Mm-hmm. But overall, your guesswork on the print runs and stuff like that, although they're obviously all lower, you know, when you get back into the older stuff.
That's insane because, like, I mean, some of the modern day books, like print runs are, you know, it's definitely a factor in collecting. So, I mean, if you came across something that there's only a few available, like how does the pricing even work? Like how does like, you know, how is a price set?
Right.
Is it just
a lot of
so random?
Yeah, well, and it is, and it's what you think it's worth. You know, like I tell people on my Whatnot shows, you guys are setting the market here. You know, you guys are telling us what you think these books are worth because,
right,
you know, so many new people coming into it and not having a heavy sales history. We can do comparisons. You know, we can say, well, this copy is similar to an ASM 129, and that sells for this and this grade, so this should sell for about this. But yeah, it really is between the buyer and seller what they think it's worth. But yeah, some are really starting to go up there. Like there was a Batman 251 from Brazil that just sold on eBay last month. It was an 8.0 CGC. Okay. It's the only one on the census from Brazil. It sold for $3,000. The American version the day before sold for $1,100 in the same grade. So, you know, people are starting to realize this. And when they're getting those rare ones, it's like, if you want it, you're probably not going to find another one. And when you're looking at grades, you know, American, the grade is everything. And the foreign, especially when you get to the older, you got to really get the book first and then worry about the grade second, because so many are mid-grade that really like an 8.0 is pretty similar to like a 9.2 or even a 9.8 because there's just not any out there in that grade.
So that's interesting that you would focus on just trying to acquire the book, and then the grade is secondary. It's like, okay, now I have it. Okay, let's take a look at it. That's an interesting way to approach, because you're right. When we're seeking out books, it's all about the grade first, and the book is secondary.
Right. And when you have thousands on the census, that's understandable. Yeah. But when you're dealing with scarcity like this, it's get that book first, and then if you can upgrade it later, great. But you know, if not, you may have, like my Daredevil from CBCS is a 1.0, and I love it. You know. I know even American Daredevil 1.0s are desirable now, but you know, stuff like that, I may never be able to upgrade that. There's only one raw copy on eBay and they want $2,500 for it. It's like,
yeah, because you may never find another copy. It may not, like, to your knowledge, it may not even exist.
Right. Or, you know, the collectors that have them, they're not coming off it because they see what the market's doing.
Right. You know? Right. It's so crazy, like to think that, like, I mean, this community they're collecting is so driven on data, like, and facts and figures. Like, I mean, we you know, that's how I consume and how I buy books, because when I do my research, I'm looking at past history, I'm looking at what's on the census, and etc. Like, it's just, I don't even know how to describe, like, approaching collecting foreign books, because there's just like the Wild West, but there's just really no structure to it. Yeah, like, is that an appeal as well to a lot of people?
Yeah, we call it the Wild West, and you know, like I got one here. This is from Brazil in 1977, and until last year, people didn't know this existed because inside it's got Tomb of Dracula 9 and 10. But before HFQ actually discovered this last summer, and before that, they thought a 90s comic from Brazil was the first appearance of Blade. And so, you know, you get to discover cool stuff like this, that this is the true first appearance of Blade, and there's probably only 10 or 20 of them out there.
Sorry, can I see the cover of that a little bit closer? I'm gonna bring you, hold on a second, going to bring you, oops. Let's see if I can do this. Hold on a second. Wow. And that is issue...
It's issue 9 and 10. They combined them. And this is, you know, the digest size, which you see a lot in the other ones. But yeah, you know, until you open it up and look at the guts, and then you're like, hey, that's Blade's first panel. And this is Tomb of Dracula 10. And there's Tomb of Dracula 9. So you got the first Vampire Lucas brand too with it. You know, it's a bonus double key. Like I had a really low grade one of this and on Whatnot a couple weeks ago, and it sold for over $200, you know, because people thought that the 90s one was the first one. Well, it's not. This is the first one, but we didn't know that until we discovered it.
So is that like, okay, where does that information go? Is it just like, does that get like, do they like, I know everybody's really relying on the apps and the sites. Like, do they pick up on that?
Well, yeah, we put the information out as we find it. I made a post about it. HFQ did. Some other other people talked about it, and it just kind of spreads throughout the community that, hey, this is new and discovered now. So this is now the first appearance, and we thought this was before, but we're always learning every day. And that's some of the fun with forums. You get stuff from other countries, you open it up, and you see what's in it.
Do you think that like, I guess this is not a first, like there's probably other instances where we have first appearances in a foreign book rather than what we traditionally think it is, correct?
Oh yeah. Because you have some people, they collect foreigns just for covers. So you have a few different collectors in foreigns. Some people just care about the guts, if they want that blade. And then some people only want both. They only want it if it's got the cover and the guts. So you got three subsets within the foreign community that are all, vibrant and thriving and growing within themselves.
So let's go over that again. So you have three different modes of attacking or collecting foreign books. What are they? What are they again? Sorry.
You have people that like to do cover sets, like ASM 300. They're going to collect all the covers of those that are. They don't care what's inside. They just care about the cover.
Right.
And then people who want the guts. They want to make sure that first panel from ASM 300 is inside, and they don't care what's on the cover. And then you got people that want both. They only want it if it's got the cover and the guts. And within all three, you got people spending serious money.
That's interesting. That's yeah. Because it adds definitely a diversity to traditional comic collecting. Wow, that's interesting. What would you suggest then to somebody who's kind of getting into it? Like you mentioned those Russian books, but let's say somebody really kind of wants to sink their teeth into it. What do you think? And aside from like picking their favorite country or character, where is a good place to start collecting? Like how do I put this? Like, say someone's getting into collecting and they wanted to get into a little bit more of spec books, you'd be like, start looking at all this stuff because of the MCU that's evolving. Is there like something up and coming that's hot that people should pay attention to?
Well, you do have most of your American keys that are printed now are printed in other countries, so you can find just about any modern spec you want. You can find some different versions of it from other countries. Okay. You get into the older stuff. What I try to tell people of, if you're looking for a big key, me and HFQ will basically come up with a rule set: 1 year, 5 year, and 10 year. So you want to stay within 10 years of the original American printing if you can. And if you got it within the first year, that's a huge key. If it's within the first 5 years, that's a level 2 key. And then if you can't get that, try to get something that was printed within 10 years of the American original. Because you got stuff reprinted from the 80s and 90s and whatnot, and those are cool to get too, but some of them are 20 years after the original. So who knows what's going to happen as the market goes. Even though it's maybe the first printing in that country, you're still a couple decades after the American key.
Right. So then that would, I guess, affect the value of it, right?
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead.
No. So the closer you get to the original North American printing, the more valuable.
Right. And that's where I think the market's going to land too. Like I got a French Canadian Hulk 181. That's from 1974. And they do a different cover. But that same year, Hulk 181 was 1974, so that is a top tier key there.
When was that printed?
1974.
1974.
Traditions Heritage. That's the French Canadian company where you saw some different keys.
Wow.
But yeah, I actually like this cover better. Some people don't, but that's just my opinion on it. Like the blade, that was within 5 years, but it was the first printing of it. So those are all highly desirable.
Wow, it's interesting. I didn't realize that. When I thought of foreign books, I just assumed that the North American version is printed, and then like literally at the same time, the foreign edition is printed. Like knowing that there could be these huge gaps between them is quite interesting.
And then you have some like in Brazil, going back to there. You have multiple companies sometimes printing it. So
no way.
The first Morbius was I sold a couple weeks ago from Brazil. It was actually from RGE, which was the second company to print it in Brazil, but it was the first time they printed it. So it's the first appearance of Morbius from RGE, but it's the second overall in Brazil. So you get into some weird stuff like that where you got multiple companies sometimes printing books, a few years apart.
So are you figuring out this information like as you buy it, or did you know this before going into something like that?
Some of it you learn before you buy, some of it you just learn as you go. Like every day I'm literally spending hours researching foreigns, As you learn more titles, you learn more what to research, because you can't just Google Spanish Hulk 181. You got to know some of the titles. Right. So as you do more, you're able to find out more, which leads you to doing more research and more, so it can snowball pretty quick, but it's really fun research because you're always learning new stuff with it.
That's so interesting. What appeals to me is like knowing that you could have something that people don't know about, like the first appearance actually being in a foreign edition as opposed to a traditional North American edition. That's
and there's a few out there that are probably first appearances actually overseas versus here. A lot of that information is still coming out. So again, it's like the Wild West. We're learning as we go. A lot of times with it being a different cover, like I said, you don't know until you buy the book and open it up. Like this one here, nobody would think twice really looking at this, but this is from 1980 in France, and show you here. How many times can you get these two panels side by side in the same comic? That's all 181 in the same book. You just don't get that in America, So you would never know by looking at it.
Okay. What is that book?
This is, it's Strange. It's one of the big French publishers. They did a lot. You can usually tell by the different colored Spidey heads. You'll get all different kinds of colored Spidey, yellow and red and green and purple. But yeah, this was from early 80s in France. Gene Frizzano really brought a lot of the Marvel superheroes to France and is one of the cultural icons there. And a lot of this is just because he decided to start doing it. He would take sometimes the covers and do an inspired cover, but do his own twist on them. Like X-Men 101, he's got a really cool version of it. Still Phoenix coming out, but it's got a different background. He did, his own version of it. So you get some cool stuff like that too. But yeah, a lot of it is just is doing the research and learning as you go.
That's crazy. Like, it just seems like let's start like when were foreigns becoming a thing, like that you when did they start printing them, like not like the popular ones?
Well, the top on my want list this year is there's a Superman from Spain in 1940, and they reprinted it in 47. So you have two editions of Superman from in Spanish, before 1950. They've been printing these for a while. UK, some of the older stuff, is really getting collectible. The Guris, and those are really collectible as well, from Brazil, from the 50s. And so they've been making these for a while. They just weren't considered collectible comics. They were just readers. People would read them, throw them away, or, they just toss them into their closet or whatever. And they didn't see any value to protect them, really. So that's why mid-grade really is high grade on a lot of your older.
Yeah, like you said, you're after the book rather than the grade. That's so interesting. Do the grading companies, I guess they acknowledge it's the foreign edition? Is it documented on how it's labeled?
Yep, I got my Daredevil here for you.
Oh, perfect.
So,
okay.
This is a CBCS. Oh, let me get it out of the bag here. It's a little shiny. And CGC, I haven't seen their announcement yet, but they said they are making an announcement of how they're going to start labeling them. Because you can imagine there's a pretty heavy debate among the foreign community on how to label these. But so let's see here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it there. Well, what you got here, it's 1966 Mexican edition, and it does say your first appearance and everything, so they put that info on there.
Oh, okay.
And then on the back, printed Daredevil 1 in Spanish and different notes and whatnot they have for that country. So I like CBCS's approach a little better, but CGC is definitely aware of it, and they have some game plan they're going to announce. They just haven't announced it yet, to my knowledge, but they said they were going to at the start of the year. So anytime.
Okay, so what does CBCS do different than CGC in terms of information?
They just put a little more of it.
Okay.
They'll put all the information about the print of it. They'll put, like, back here, they put the cover, all that info. They're a little more in depth. I think they've been doing it a little bit longer, and I think they saw the appeal of foreigners quicker than CGC did, and made sure they focused on them and did them right.
That's interesting, because that's definitely like a marker that they're garnering attention when you have like the two bigs in grading that are now they're putting time and effort into properly designating what it is, rather than just be like they kind of think it is. That's interesting. So then they're also creating a database so that all these books will get entered into their system as well, right?
Yeah. So you have some census data on graded foreigns, some of the more popular ones like that Daredevil. There's I think 8 or 9 just on the CBCS census, but then you have a lot of different debates. Some people think they should only be called reprints. Some people think they should be called first edition in that country. I found that if it's printed the first time in that country, that's the first appearance in that country. I don't think that country should really get dinged because they didn't print it when America did. They printed it, when they did, and that's their first appearance.
That's it. That's interesting.
But that leads to some differences, like the first appearance of Black Panther in canon in Brazil is different than the first appearance of Black Panther in comics in Brazil, because they did it a few years later. So they didn't start with Fantastic Four 52. They printed one from like Fantastic Four later on, was one of his later appearances, but it was the first appearance of him in Brazil, and they didn't wind up reprinting FF 52 until later. So, you may want to collect the canon first appearance or the actual first appearance, which I put more weight towards the actual. Some people put more weight towards the canon. That's
interesting. What would why would they make that choice to print it at different times rather than?
There's really no rhyme or reason.
Okay.
You can, sometimes I think it was just them sitting around going, hey, this looks cool, let's put this story out. Sometimes it may have been, censorship from the government, wouldn't want to print something for whatever reason, and so they printed what they could. Sometimes you'll get foreign comics that are just like maybe 12 or 15 panels from a 40-panel story, and there's no rhyme or reason to it, but that's what they put out. So.
That's interesting. Wow. Can we go back to the reprint? Is this going to be is this a debate? Is this going to be a thing? They make a decision and be like, we're going to treat them as reprints? That's huge.
That's where people are waiting to see where CGC falls. I mean, obviously the collectors who agree with CGC is going to be like, yeah, that's what we wanted. And the ones that disagree with them is going to be like, oh, that's junk. But that's going to always happen. And there's no hard answer. It really is what do you think, and what do you think is going to be the best value for you, and what do you want to collect?
Do you think that'll affect the value of the books right now, or?
It could, if they decide to call them reprints instead of first appearances, that could drive the market down temporarily until, more people learn of it and see these are actually first appearances. But yeah, so I think they definitely have a responsibility to make sure that they do it right.
That's, with a lot of things, the market definitely sometimes dictates a lot of the, certain things with books. So if they do make a decision to call them reprints, I can see how the market would be like, you know what, they're not. We're going to keep moving forward, and how it would just be like a little blip in the system.
Even if CGC did that, they would be in conflict with CBCS. CBCS is calling them first appearances, as they should.
Okay.
It's already locked into that. So I think that's where CGC is going to land. Again, they just haven't officially made their announcement yet.
When did CBCS do this? When did they?
Doing that as long as I've seen them grading foreign. So I don't know that they ever actually called them reprints. They say first appearance of Daredevil in Brazil, or wherever it is.
Interesting. Yeah, it never even crossed my mind to consider it as a reprint, because they're done at different time points. A book here. And then, let's take the UF4 when they reissued it or reprinted it. It's kind of the same thing, no? Or
well, no, because it's not the first time it was printed here in America. So it is a reprint because they've already printed it here. But if a country hasn't printed it yet, I don't really know how you call that a reprint.
No, sorry. What I meant was because you had mentioned that in countries will do different printings, right?
Yeah.
So would they call that second issue a reprint? Oh, okay.
Yeah, some of them will do multiple runs, like the Russian reprints. Again, they've done a few different runs.
So they call them reprints.
Yeah, but it's hard to tell those because they come polybagged, and only the first print had a sticker on the polybag. So if you take it out of the polybag, there's no way to know. And when they get it, they're going to take it out of the polybag. But I don't ever think those are going to be like $200 or $300 comics. They stay right around $30 to $50 each. And that's probably where they'll stay just because they're so recent, in the last couple of years. But yeah, it's hard to tell sometimes if they're reprints or not. And the company may not announce if they're reprint. They may just, release, say, we found another box in the warehouse. And who's to tell them different?
Wow, that's interesting. Wow, that's like, oh my God, I can't even, it's hard to wrap my head around like the inconsistencies because I'm so used to, again, structure.
Right. And a lot of it is just with the moderns. I just tell people be careful. If you're going to spend a lot of money on foreigns, there's some great moderns out there that are worth it. But obviously, I'm focusing on the Bronze Age on back because I know the scarcity of those. I know they're not going to come out and say, "Hey, we found another case of these." So they can't really reprint these and even try that.
Right. So for someone, like I said, for someone getting into it, what would be the mode of attack? What would you like, again, direct them towards? Like the bigger keys, like your Hulk 20s, 181s, 129s.
Yep, pick something that you like that's out of reach for you, an American version, and see what you can find out there that's available. You can do some research on eBay. Like if you search Spanish Hulk 181, you'll probably get some hits. But if you know the title of the search, then you're going to get more hits. But that'll give you, at least a good starting point where you can see, hey, I want to get this big key. Let's see if there's an Italian version. Let's see if there's a Spanish version. Let's see which one of those two I like the best. Maybe they got different covers and I like one of the covers better than the other, Or maybe one has an Avengers story in the back I like instead of this one's got a Fantastic Four story in the back, so.
That's crazy. They have multiple stories in there.
Yeah, that's I got another French one here to kind of highlight that. This is again one of the special strange from the 80s, but this reprints, you got X-Men #1, right?
Yeah.
And just a little further back here. Oh, that's it. You also have Avengers #1 in here.
No way. Really?
This is from the 80s, so there's not a ton of these. There's some because they're starting to see how desirable they are. I got one that has an AF-15 and a Hulk #1 in it. It's really cool stuff like that. And you don't know that until you open it. I bought these. I just thought it was cool. It said it was an X-Men 1 reprint, but I didn't know the Avengers was in there until I opened it up.
And what, like that book there, what's the time difference to the original printings?
Well, this is early 80s, so this you're more than the 10 years out of them.
But still.
Yes, it's one of the cooler ways. If you really want to get into it, you can get these for under $100 still. So it's a good way to get into it and get those copies. And then, maybe upgrade from there and find an original from there you want. But yeah, you just never know what the guts are.
So I'm curious. Let me ask the Canadian question. So were those printed in Montreal or?
No, these are actually from France.
Oh, they're from France. Okay.
The Hulk 181 was from it's French Canadian. I'm not sure exactly where it was printed. I'd have to do some more research on that. But yeah, the other ones, the Stranges, are actual French editions from France.
Okay. What's the manufacturer for the Strange books?
That's a good question. Let's see. It just says editions LUG. I don't try to speak other language.
Okay, sure. Yeah. All right. Interesting. All right.
It says Marvel Editions LUG. So that would be the printing company. Sure. And then you'll get some that don't even have the inside indica. That's more rare, but sometimes they didn't even bother putting the indica in there.
That's wild. Do they, like, I'm going to ask a question. Did they have variations in that? Like, would they do a newsstand edition as well? Like,
I've tried to find out if there's newsstand editions. I haven't had any luck yet. I don't think they did differences. So I don't think, but again, we're always looking for more information on those. But to my knowledge, they either had a barcode or they didn't. There wasn't two versions of each.
Oh, okay, because that would be kind of wild. Like they would have an even more rare version of it. Like that's pretty wild. Okay, so that's good. Where somebody can kind of get started. What's and in terms of resources, we mentioned Facebook, Instagram. Are there any other sort of places where people can kind of like do some research aside from that, or?
Most of your online comic databases, there's a few bigger ones. They'll have some listings for foreign editions. Once you know the titles to plug in and look, like L'Uomo Ragno is a big one with Italy. Once you start searching those, it'll pull up, hey, we got 20 of these editions in our database, and you just start to learn more from there. The Reprints, that's a good name to search. You'll get a lot of information if you just plug in La Prensa. There's a lot more coming out on it. So,
Yeah, interesting. Where do you see everything kind of, now we know where the lay of the land, where do you see everything going from here on in?
I think foreigns are just going to keep climbing. As more people get into them and become aware of them. I mean, the market out there, the supply is pretty limited. The people that have been buying them for a year or two, or more, we're pretty cognizant of the amount of supply. Like maybe a year ago, you might have been able to find 10 ASM 300s on eBay. Now you can only find 3 or 4. So as that market shrinks and more people don't want to sell them, they're going to say, I'm not going to sell this until it's worth X amount of dollars. And that's a hard rule they set. Or some foreign collectors now, they're not even selling it unless it's an extra copy. They're not selling single copies anymore because you just don't know when you're going to replace it. I've been trying to replace a Spanish ASM 129 from 1974. I sold for 3 months. I can't find another copy. You just got to hope and pray sometimes.
Yeah, that's one of the, I know a lot of people have that mentality, like say something, a trailer drops or whatever, and you have, let's take Moon Knight, and you have, Moon Knight 1, and the trailer drops, it spikes, you're like, I'm going to sell it because when everything kind of calms down, I'm going to grab another copy, maybe even a higher grade, but that's wild. You're like, I may never see this book again.
Yeah, and the older it is, the more of a chance you're not going to see it again. Like I said, the moderns, they have a better supply because they made more, and those are still some great books out there to buy in moderns. But as you get into the Bronze Age on back, it's getting much harder to replace copies yourself.
Right. So you still feel that a lot of these foreigns are undervalued?
Oh yeah, I think not every key, but I think most of your bigger keys are going to be close to where your Canadian price variants are when the market settles. Just because there's the demand for them, and when the demand outweighs the supply, that's what happens. The prices go up, and I don't think the supply will ever meet the demand once everyone gets into foreigns that's going to get into them.
Yeah, I think that's just going to keep growing and growing. Like, again, it's only been the past year that I've seen a rise, and it's through Instagram, it's through other people in YouTube. And I can see it gaining momentum, but if you don't have that supply, like I can really see these prices like really kind of escalate.
Yeah, like what I tell people is, I think it's only going to take maybe 10 or 15 big collectors, people who are going to come in and say, I'm going to spend 30, 40 grand on foreigns.
Right.
If we get 10 of those people doing it, the supply's gone. I mean, you can wipe out Mercari for under 50 grand right now on their big foreign keys.
No, really?
And they're high priced, but if someone decides to go wipe them out, they're wiped out. eBay would take a little more to wipe out, but there's probably less than $1 million worth of foreign comic keys on eBay. And some of them are just ridiculous price. There's one guy that got a lot of Stan Lee signatures on foreigns, and those are probably 101s, but he wants like $5 grand a piece for them. When it's the regular copy is worth like 800 now. So, but eventually it's going to be worth that, and he's going to get it.
That's interesting. Like that you even know that there's that kind of supply on certain marketplaces.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you would. Like, I mean, you're, that's what you do. You're a dealer, and you deal with that. How do you make the decision then of what to keep and what to sell? Because I know that's part of what you do. Like, I would be afraid, like you have your whatnot sales of your foreigns. I would be afraid to sell it. I don't know, right. But that would just be my mentality.
Yeah, it's hard to not pull everything from my PC. I had to kind of shrink down when I started focusing on selling foreigns, because otherwise I want to keep everything.
Right.
And you got to kind of pick and choose. Like the Brazil blade, that's in my PC. Mm-hmm. Until someone makes me an offer I can't refuse, then they can pry it out of there. But until then, that's a PC book. I only got 3 books on my want list this year, and one of them's the Superman 1940. That's going straight in my PC, and that's staying there till it hits six figures. So stuff like that. There's definitely a lot of room for growth on them still. So you just got to kind of decide what you want to do with them. If you want to save them now and buy everything you can and not sell any, that's one way to invest. If you want to buy and sell and try to buy more, that's another way to hit them. So.
What is it going to be like when things do start escalating? Are people going to focus on certain things, or is it just going to be like across the board? Or
you'll see, just like most of them, Marvel's going to be your heavy. But again, because everyone was Marvel back in the 60s and 70s and 80s printing, DCs are much harder to find in foreign editions. So it's not going to take many DC fans really to dry that market up either. For every 10 Marvel keys, you might only have 1 or 2 DC keys, you know?
Wow.
So,
yeah. That's interesting. Do you collect DC or?
I do. I have a couple, not any in my PC right now, just because I haven't found one that I wanted, but I have like a Brazil first Raja Ghul coming, you know, that'll probably go in my PC because I got a good deal on that. And it's the first one I'd seen in a year. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's one that I probably can't replace anytime soon. So I'm going to hang on to it.
That's interesting. So I guess another piece of advice for people is look out for those DC foreign editions, because it sounds like they're much more rare.
Yeah, they weren't made as much because they weren't as popular. You know, like I said, they weren't printing these for collectibles, especially on the Bronze Age on back. They were printing them for readers, and there weren't as many DC readers, you know, so they didn't print as many. It's just how it was.
Yeah, that's interesting. When do you think that flip happened? That people are like, okay, these are collectible.
Well, it's going to be different in each country. Like the Spanish ones, the Reprints, those have been collectible longer than the rest because people were drawn to the non-canon Spiderman stories. Okay. So they wanted to get something you couldn't get anywhere else. So when you got stuff like that, that brought interest a lot earlier, and it helped, you know, focus on the foreign market. But again, yeah, there's really not a hard answer to that one.
No, I was just curious because, like, you know, there's certain marker points in our community here in North America where you can be like, hey, people took this kind of seriously with certain things, but and then printing these just to have people read them. Yeah, I can just imagine how they were treated.
Yeah, mid grades are high grades, and then low grades are mid grades. You know, it's like, you got a 1.0 or a 2.0, be happy with it. That's a decent mid-grade foreign copy most of the time, you know.
Now, is that for foreign collectors? Is that like a mode of approach? That's how they treat the grades, like
that. Yeah, that's how some people view it different. They're still comparing to American grades, but you're never going to get a 9.8 Hulk 181 out of France. You know, it's just they don't exist. So you got to figure out what you think a top grade is. And like I tell people, an 8.0 is about a high grade as you're going to get. There's a couple of 5s and 9s here and there, but man, they are rare and they get premiums. Like that Batman, that was an 8.0, you know, it sold for 3 times the American price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, any foreign, and I've looked at some of your books as well, and it's hard to get past that mode of thinking where you look at the grade, you're like, oh, this book doesn't look whatever, but like it's really, I find that kind of hard to get past, rather than just like, oh, this is a pretty rare book, like you should probably jump on it.
Yeah, especially newer collectors, you know, that's all they hear is get the grade, get that grade, high grade stuff, and so it's understandable. But yeah, you really have to kind of flip your thinking when you're going. It's ownership first and grade second with foreigns, whereas American keys, it's grade first and then, you know, ownership second. So
yeah, that's wild.
Buy it if it's not a 9.0 or higher, and mentality going into foreigns, you're not going to buy many.
Do you, like, when you're interacting with people who are kind of like, you know, you're selling to people? Is that something that obviously that comes up in conversation? Like, I'm sure more often than not, people are like, oh, it's not that good, you know, grade when they're looking at your books. I don't know.
Yeah, you definitely get some people who are questioning it and saying, well, where's the high grade stuff? And you got to explain to them this is the high grade stuff. You know, it's but yeah, it's just about educating people and letting them know, you know, hey, you can go find 5,000 Hulk 181s. That's why it's grade driven. You can't find even 500 of the Hulk 181s in this, so that's why it's not grade driven, because you just can't find them. You know, you can't go out and find 50 of them on eBay for sale.
Right. Oh my God, this is a lot to take in, because I definitely, you know, one of the reasons I wanted to make this is because I definitely would like to get into, you know, collecting some of the foreign books. I'm super interested in it, but I'm again, like some of the golden age, I'm not saying scared, but I just don't know. Like a lot of people, they just don't have the knowledge, and you can really, I guess you can get, I'm not saying screwed, but you can get steered in a wrong direction fast.
Yeah, it is easy to get misled if you're not paying attention or doing your research. Most of the international and foreign comic people I've dealt with are pretty honest and on the up and up, and they're just about educating you and, you know, telling you what you're getting. But just like anything else, you're gonna have people out there that are just worried about their next sale and maximizing it. Right. So sometimes that's gonna put a bad taste in people's mouth, and they're gonna find out I paid $300 for this book. I should have paid, 40. But that's just the nature of the game. You just got to be careful. Always let the buyer beware.
Right. Okay, this is awesome. I don't want to take up too much of your time, so we'll probably end shortly. Let's recap. Let's tell everybody what because this video is going to drop pretty soon. Tell everybody what you're up to, and then where things are kind of going with Hockey Comics.
Sure. I love Whatnot. I've been focusing on there. I'm moving towards starting to do 2 shows a week on there here in the next month or so. And it's all foreign focused. Every one of my shows that are auctioned is at least 50% foreign. And then, like I said, the first of every month is 100% foreign. I'm also looking to bring some mystery boxes there, whether those are foreign or American. I do those on Instagram. And so I always have that audience. I'm going to keep working with them. But yeah, Whatnot I think that's the future of live collectible auctions, and they've really been growing week to week. I just see more and more viewers and more people on there, and so that's where you're going to find me with a lot of my foreign editions, and that's Hockey Comics. I'm the same on Instagram and Whatnot.
I'll put once I upload this video, I'll put all the links below, and then you can hit them up and grab some books, join the Whatnot sales. Sadly, they don't allow Canadians just yet into selling. Hopefully soon. I've messaged them.
They're working on it. They've said they're working on it. So
I know I've messaged them a few times. I think they're tired of me bugging them, but we'll see what happens. Awesome. Thank you taking the time today. I learned a ton. I hope a lot of people watch this and learn as well. Is there any parting thoughts before we say goodbye?
No, I really appreciate you having me on. I love talking about foreigns. I can do it all day. So if you got questions on foreigns, find me on Whatnot or Instagram, and you'll usually find out. You can just ask me anything. And if I don't know, I'll tell you. And if I can find out, I'll find out.
Awesome. All right. With that, we will say goodbye. I hope everybody has a great day, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.
Have a good one.